The main issue is accommodating China's rise as an economic, diplomatic, and even military power. It's hard to think of a period in history when an established great power like the U.S. was able to peacefully work things out with an up-and-comer like China. And there are plenty of areas where the two countries irritate each other, even threaten one another. So many, in fact, that it may be impossible for Xi and Obama to get anywhere. To give us his assessment, we have Bob Kapp with us on Skype. Bob was formerly head of the U.S.-China Business Council, but his expertise goes beyond trade and commerce. Thank you for coming on the program, Bob.
Great to be back, Tweet.
Let's start with the place Xi and Obama are meeting. They're not meeting in Washington, not in Beijing, but instead at the Sunnylands Desert Retreat in Southern California. Why?
Well, first of all, it's a gorgeous place. It really looks like a wonderful place for meetings of this kind. Second of all, the idea was to get away from the endless formalities, what I call the brain-killing, nitpicking niceties of a formal state visit where you get into these bitter arm-wrestling arguments over who's going to sit next to whom at the head table. This is a much easier and more relaxation-inducing way to have a meeting. It's very unusual, particularly for a leader of the Chinese government, to go this route. Americans like to do this kind of thing. The Chinese are generally prefer the formalities of a carefully scripted and choreographed state visit. But that's a good sign. And it's also very far from Washington. It's far from Capitol Hill, where a great many people take advantage of a high visibility meeting like this to score points of their own. And frankly, the media will probably not be sitting around the table with these two leaders either, and that may not be such a bad thing.
In fact, to further reiterate your point, I mean, Obama has complained in the past that Xi's predecessor, when he met with him, never strayed from the talking points, and that was a great point of frustration for him. If Obama and Xi end up really liking each other, will it make a dime's bit of difference about the problems the two sides have?
Well, I'd say it'll make a dime's worth. I'm not sure it's going to make a dollar's worth. Some of your older viewers will remember Ron and Yasu, which was the Ronald Reagan and Nakasone Yasuhiro, the Japanese prime minister's supposedly casual relationship with each other after they had a similar meeting many decades ago. And frankly, Americans loved it. They just ate it up. We're not going to see Barack and Jinping out of this. These two men are the heads of the two most powerful, if you will, most powerful governments in the world. They're virtually strangers to one another with only a little bit of time together in the past. So instant intimacy, which Americans kind of like in the abstract, isn't going to happen. What we hope will happen is that in the absence of these formally scripted lists of talking points that lead to a kind of a dialogue of the deaf, that the two will actually begin to feel that they can communicate with each other now and in the future when they need to on matters of real importance. That is one hopeful result of this meeting.
Another complicated question, the question of the military. The U.S. and China are beefing up their military in the Pacific. That worries people in Asia. Are we moving toward a policy of containment against China, much like what we saw with the Soviet Union during the Cold War, thwarting them at every turn?
Well, this is the essence of why the two sides are looking for what Xi Jinping calls a new kind of relationship between great powers. Because indeed, the Chinese military has expanded its capacities a great deal, and one of the ways that it's expanding those capacities even now is by beefing up its ability to deter American military force from getting too close to China in the event of hostilities. For example, intervening in some military confrontation off the Chinese coast. And that makes the American military nervous because if the Chinese are better able to deter them from taking action against China, then they feel they need to beef things up to be able to overcome that Chinese deterrence. And that is the makings of an arms race and what is called a security dilemma, a descending spiral. Both leaders know that that's an issue. And one hopes that out of this discussion and hopefully the enhanced military-to-military contacts that will continue to follow out of these discussions, we will figure out ways for better communication and better avoidance of crisis and better consultation before either side takes an action which really inflames the other. Because this is the great uneasiness now. I mean, one of the things that would be nice to come out of this, who knows what's going to come out. One of the things that would be nice would be not necessarily a high visibility announcement of agreements to change our behavior and change their behavior, but rather a kind of unannounced, unilateral on each side a reduction in the kinds of behaviors that set the teeth of the other side on edge. So we don't have to say they made us do it or we made them do it or we're doing it because they told us to. But each side having a better sense of what really sets off the adrenal glands on the other side simply begins to moderate or modify its behavior in those areas.
So a new relationship may very well mean a new set of ground rules, perhaps, for diplomacy in this case. Thanks, Bob. Let's hope the meeting at Rancho Mirage doesn't just end up as an illusion in the desert.
Let's hope it doesn't. I think actually there are going to be some very useful outcomes. Thanks a lot, Tweet.
All right. Bob Kapp is former head of the U.S.-China Business Council and a member of LinkAsia's advisory board.
Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.